Hello everyone, welcome to Study IQ. In this lecture, I will cover Negotiable Instruments Act. This is Banking Awareness Static, one of the most beautiful, one of the most premium courses. And this is lecture number 2. In the lecture number 3, we will cover the SARFAESI Act. So in this course, I am covering the most difficult topics, the most complex topics first. The lecture number 1 was about Basel norms, which I believe is one of the most difficult topics to understand. And Negotiable Instruments Act is also very, very difficult. Not only it is difficult, but it is very conceptual, highly conceptual. So you have to be on the top of your game. In fact, both the teacher and the student, they need to be at their best to understand this topic. So I can promise that I will be at my best, but I also need your attention. They say that acquiring knowledge is not free. You have to pay something. And what is that pay? You have to pay attention, right? So this is one of the most premium courses of mine. And let's start now with one of the most difficult topics, Negotiable Instruments Act. Now, Negotiable Instrument Act, we call it the Negotiable Instruments Act of 1881. Of course, this act has been amended multiple times. So Negotiable Instruments Act, it was enacted when? On 9th of December 1881. So it came into December 1881. That is why we call it Negotiable Instruments Act of 1881. But when did it come into force? When did it actually came into effect? So it was 1st of March 1882. And this is very important for your MCQs. Negotiable Instruments Act came into force on 1st of March 1882. Now if you see here, there are three words: negotiable, instruments and act. Right? So there are three words that you have to learn. Act, you already know what is an act. When a bill is passed by the parliament and signed by the President of India, it becomes an act. Instrument and negotiable. Now the word negotiable simply means transferable. When you are able to transfer one thing, right, from one person to another, that is called transferable. For example, let's say you have a check. Now you can write the check in favor of a person, let's say called Ankit. And Ankit can then give this check to a person called Sujit. Right? So what will Ankit do? I have signed a check in favor of Ankit for 10,000 rupees. And now Ankit will simply sign on the back side of the check. He will write pay to Sujit and he will put his signature. So now the check is transferred to Sujit. So check is a transferable or negotiable instrument. Now the word negotiable has nothing to do with negotiation. What is negotiation? So for example, if you want a salary of 80,000 rupees, you say I want 80,000 rupees, but your boss says that we will give you only 70,000. So you negotiate your salary. And finally, there is a consensus at 75,000. This is called negotiation, but the word negotiable has nothing to do with this negotiation. In fact, when you do bargaining from a shopkeeper, that is also negotiation, but negotiability is completely different here. The word negotiable means transferable, something that can be transferred from one person to another. And what is the meaning of the word instrument? So instrument is a written document. It is a written document. So my question to you is every written document a negotiable instrument? So for example, I write a letter to my mother. Okay, I am living in hostel, and if I write a letter to my mother, now that is a written document, right? Okay, these days nobody writes letter. In the times of WhatsApp and maybe email, very few will write letters. But let's say if I write a letter to my mother, that is a written document, right? So is that also an instrument? No. So not every document is an instrument. Okay. A document becomes an instrument only when it creates a right or a liability. So only when it creates a right or a liability. For example, let's say if I have written a check in favor of Ankit. So here 10,000 rupees check in favor of Ankit I have written. Now this 10,000 therefore will become my liability because I have to pay it to Ankit, right? And Ankit now has a right over this 10,000. Understood? So it is creating a right or a liability. So any written document, I repeat, any written document, if it creates a right or a liability, only then it will be called a negotiable instrument, right? So if a written document creates a right or liability, it will be called an instrument, and if it is transferable also, it will be called as a negotiable instrument. So a negotiable instrument is what? It is a written document which is transferable and which creates a right or a liability. Easy. And this definition of a negotiable instrument is given in section 13. So what does section 13 say? Section 13 of the Negotiable Instrument Act says that negotiable instrument means a promissory note, bill of exchange or check payable either to order or to bearer, whether the word order or bearer appear on the instrument or not. So in negotiable instruments, we have only three things: bill of exchange, we have a promissory note, and we have a check. These are the only three things that you have to study in negotiable instrument. Now it may be possible that there are other documents also which are transferable and which are written documents which create right or liability, but they are not negotiable. Understood? So in MCQs, you will find that these questions are very, very common. They will give you 4 options. Out of the 4, 3 will be bill of exchange, promissory note and check, and the 4th one will be the answer, because the question will be which of these is not a negotiable instrument. So Negotiable Instrument Act defines only 3: promissory note, bill of exchange and check. These are the only 3 negotiable instruments. So which are not negotiable instruments? All of these are not negotiable instruments according to the Negotiable Instruments Act of 1881. A treasury bill, share certificate. Now share certificate, of course, it is transferable from one person to another, and it is a written document also, but still it is not covered by the Negotiable Instruments Act, so it is not a negotiable instrument. Share warranty, currency note, for example. Currency note is also not a negotiable instrument. Hundi, what is a hundi? So hundi is basically in the old days. Okay, in the old days, hundi was popular. People used to borrow money from one another for their business, right? And hundi was in practice. Hundi was in fact a very common practice in the old days. So hundi is a unconditional order. Unconditional order that is given in writing, made by a person directing another person to pay a certain sum of money to a person named in the order. For example, if I write on a piece of paper, I put a stamp, I put my signature, and I simply write in vernacular language, because hundis were there in the vernacular language, local languages like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, right? Mostly in vernacular languages. But hundis as of now, they don't have any legal backing, and therefore they are not part of the Negotiable Instruments Act. So hundi is what? For example, if I am a shopkeeper A and somebody has purchased material from me, person B, so I will ask him to pay money, right? Basically, hundis were used for trade, right? Hundis were used for trade. They are unconditional order in writing, made by a person directing another to pay a certain sum of money. And hundis are not in practice now, so they are not counted as a negotiable instrument. Although some old books, they say that hundis are bill of exchange. Okay, but we don't count now them as negotiable. Yes, in some cases hundis can be used as a bill of exchange, or they can be used as a negotiable instrument if both the parties, they have an agreement as such. Both the parties, they do an agreement which complies with the Negotiable Instrument Act, then it can act as a negotiable instrument. But in general, hundi will not be counted as a negotiable instrument. Then there is a post office money order, which is again not in practice now. So what is a post office money order? Post offices, the India Post, it was set up in 1854, And then letters became the norm. Everybody used to write letters and the postman used to deliver the letters. And then finally in 1880, we had this thing called money order. What was money order? Let's say if you are living in Delhi and you are from a village in Bihar, right, where you need to send the money. Let's say your income is 3000 rupees and out of 3000 rupees, 2000 you have to send back to your village. Understood? So what the person working in Delhi, what options did he have back then, 100 years back? Either he had to travel himself, but that will be costly also, and it may not be possible or feasible because every month you have to send money. So you can't travel to Bihar village every month. And in those days, traveling would require 3 to 4 days. There were no flights. So what this person living in Delhi will do, he will go to a post office nearby and he will pay 2000 rupees at the post office. And then the post office will create a money order, and this money order will then go to the address of this person, which is a Bihar village. Postman will go to the Bihar village and to his wife he will give these 2000 rupees and take her signature or thumb impression. So this is how a money order was created. It was created using the post office. And the advantage of a money order was that the postman actually went to all the way to your address. Okay. So when was the money order came into existence? 1880. It worked for 135 years and finally in 2015 it was shut down. Right? So we don't have a money order these days. In 2015 it was shut down because these days we have so many wallets, prepaid instruments, we have so many NEFT, RTGS, IMPS facilities. Who will do a money order? Right? It's out of the question. So in 2015 money order was shut down. It came into effect in 1880. It worked well for 135 years. And what is a treasury bill? So treasury bill is a government security. Now government securities can be short term or long term. Now of course I will cover treasury bill in detail when I take a lecture on government securities. So short term is treasury bill and long term is a bond. When I say long term, it has to be greater than 1 year of investment, and when I say short term, the investment will be less than 1 year. Understood? So government security is nothing but when the government wants to raise money from people, government tells them you invest and I will pay you certain interest. Okay, so that is government security. So it can be short term or long term. So what happened in treasury bill? Treasury bill has 3 durations. There is a treasury bill for 91 days. There is a treasury bill for 182 days, and there is a treasury bill which is for 364 days. So these are the three durations for which it is available. And what is the interest that you will get if you buy a treasury bill? Interest rate is 0. You will not get any interest. That means there is no coupon rate. Coupon rate is nothing but the interest rate. It is 0. So why will a person invest in treasury bill if he is not getting any interest? That is because treasury bills have a different way of paying to the consumer. How? So let's say you take a treasury bill of 364 days, right? And the treasury bill, the cost is 100 rupees. This is called the face value, 100 rupees. But the government will give it to you at a discount. So let's say the government gives you at 91 rupees. So this 9 rupees is what you have earned in 1 year, almost 1 year, 364 days, right? So the difference between the face value and the actual price that you pay is what you have earned, but there is no interest as such on a treasury bill. So these are some instruments, but they are not negotiable. So if I give you MCQ, which of the following is not a negotiable instrument? The 4 options will be bill of exchange, promissory note, there will be a check, or let's say the 4th option is hundi, or the 4th option is treasury bill. You will mark the 4th option. Understood? I hope you know all these now. Money order, hundi, treasury bill. Let me show you a hundi. So this is how a hundi used to be there. Very simple. There you can put on a piece of paper or a postcard. It's similar to a postcard. I mean, you can just write that my name is so and so, and after these many days, I promise to pay Mr. Bhagwan Das 2500 rupees, and you put your sign and you put the address of the person you want to pay. So hundi is what? Hundi is a unconditional order in writing made by a person directing another to pay a certain sum of money to a person named in the order. And hundis, they were a part of the informal system. They have no legal status and they are not covered under the Negotiable Instruments Act. Let me give you one example of hundi. So there is me, Gaurav, and there is Ankit, and there is Adarsh. There are three people. So Gaurav has sold goods worth 2500 rupees to Ankit. Okay. So then Gaurav will write a hundi. How? He will say that please pay after 90 days. Here it is written 86 days, but okay, I can write whatever I want. After 90 days, Mr. Ankit, please pay 2500 rupees to Adarsh. Okay, because I owe Adarsh 2500 rupees. I took a loan from Adarsh of 2500 rupees long back. Now, since Ankit owes me money, 2500, I will direct Ankit to pay to Adarsh. So I will write it in vernacular language, which can be any language, Hindi, Malayalam, Telugu, Tamil, Marathi. I will write on a piece of paper, I will put a stamp. So this is very similar to a bill of exchange. In fact, hundi is a type of bill of exchange, but in vernacular language. Understood? Okay, you will understand it better once I explain to you what is a bill of exchange. In fact, I will start with bill of exchange. So in negotiable instrument, we will study three things. Promissory note and promissory note are covered in section 4. These sections are extremely important. Bill of exchange is covered in section 5 and a check is covered in section 6 of the Negotiable Instruments Act of 1881. So now let me start with bill of exchange, section 5. First I will teach you bill of exchange, then I will teach you promissory note, and then I will teach you the most difficult one, which is the check. So let me give you an example here, and I will keep the example constant so that you are able to relate. Now Gaurav, this is me, Gaurav, and I am a shopkeeper. I am a shopkeeper. Okay. Now Gaurav has sold goods worth 10,000 rupees to Ankit. So this is Ankit Agarwal. He is our renowned faculty and is a good friend. So what I have done is I have sold goods worth 10,000 rupees to Ankit Agarwal. Okay. So who is Gaurav in this case? Okay. Gaurav is the seller. Gaurav is the seller. Now Ankit, he doesn't have money right now. He doesn't have cash to pay to me. Okay. So what I will do is I will write a bill of exchange. It is very similar to if you go to a shopkeeper to buy something, the shopkeeper gives you a bill, right? The shopkeeper gives you a bill and you pay to him then. Now in this case also something very similar is there. The only difference is that Ankit is the buyer, but he does not have the money. So what I will do, I will write a bill of exchange. Now there are three universal rules. What is that? The person who is a writer is always the drawer. This is a universal rule. And how to identify? You can see the last two words are ER in writer, and the last two alphabets in drawer are ER. ER. The person who writes, whether it is a promissory note, whether it is a bill of exchange, whether it is a check, the person who writes that instrument is always the drawer. The person who pays, who makes the payment, okay, is always the drawee. And the person who is the beneficiary, who gets the payment, is always the payee. Let me repeat once more. The writer is always the drawer. These are universal rules. This rule will never get violated. The writer is always the drawer. The person who makes the payment or who pays, in this case Ankit will pay. So Ankit is the drawee. So the person who pays will always be the drawee. And the person who gets the payment will always be the payee. This is a universal rule. The beneficiary is always the payee. Now you take this example. I have sold goods worth 10,000 to Ankit. Okay. So Ankit needs to make the payment, right? So Ankit is who? Ankit is the drawee. A drawee is always the person who pays. Now in this case, I am the writer of the bill of exchange. I am making a bill of exchange because I am who? I am the creditor. You can also call me creditor because I am giving a credit to Ankit. So I am the creditor, or I am the drawer. They all mean the same. Creditor, writer, drawer. In this case, they all are the same. So I am the drawer. So drawer has now given an order to the drawee. So Gaurav will now form a bill of exchange. So what I will write? So this is the summary. The drawer is who? Drawer is the writer. Writer is me, Gaurav Garg. My address is MG Road, Gurgaon. And the drawee is the person who needs to make the payment. That is Ankit Agarwal. He is from Civil Lines in Lucknow. Amount is 10,000 rupees. Period is 80 days. So after 80 days, I want the payment. Date of bill is 15th of March. So this is how I will make a bill of exchange. Very, very easy to make. What I will do is, I will take a piece of paper. I will put a stamp. You know this stamp, okay? It is a 1 rupee stamp. And for all the order size, where the transaction is more than 5,000 rupees, you have to put minimum 1 rupee stamp. Okay? If the amount is below 5,000 rupees, you don't need to put the stamp. But in case of a bill of exchange or a promissory note, you always have to put the stamp. I repeat, in case of a bill of exchange or promissory note, always there will be a stamp. But in general, according to the Indian Stamps Act, there is a Indian Stamps Act of 1899. For amount less than 5,000, no stamp is required. For amount greater than 5,000, 1 rupee stamp is required. Understood or not understood? This you keep in mind for your MCQ. However, in case of a bill of exchange or a promissory note, you will always put the stamp. Now this is a 1 rupee stamp. Now I am Gaurav Garg. I am writing this bill of exchange. So I am the writer or I am the drawer. Okay. And I am writing to whom? I am writing to Ankit Agarwal, Civil Lines, Lucknow. 10,000 rupees I will put. This is the amount he owes me. I will put my location and I will put the date. Okay. So 80 days after date means 80 days after this date when I am writing the bill of exchange, I am telling to Ankit what? Pay to me or my order the sum of rupees 10,000 only for value received. For value received means what? You have already got goods or services worth 10,000 from me. So you have already received the value for it. Now what you need to do? You either need to pay to me or my order. What is the meaning of pay to me or my order? So you either pay to me 10,000 rupee or to someone whom I order you to pay to. Okay. So it can be a person, third person. If I owe money to him, then I can tell Ankit, instead of paying to me, you pay to him because I owe money to him. So either you pay to me 10,000 or to someone, if I write his name, you pay to him the sum of rupees 10,000 only for value received. So this is how a bill of exchange is there. It's very incredibly easy to make. In fact, this bill of exchange I have made. I have written this myself. Okay. After 80 days, you pay to me or my order the sum of rupees 10,000 only for value received. So now this bill of exchange will go to Ankit. Now he will read it and then he will write here accepted and he will put his signature. So a bill of exchange, it needs to be accepted by whom? By drawee or the person who needs to make the payment. Most important question. Who writes the bill of exchange? Bill of exchange is written by the creditor. In this case, Gaurav. Gaurav was the creditor. Gaurav was the writer. Gaurav was the drawer. Any person who writes an instrument is always the drawer. So I am the creditor, I am the writer, or I am the drawer. It means the same. And Ankit is whom? Ankit is the debtor. He is under debt of mine. So he is a debtor. Or Ankit is the one who needs to make the payment or drawee. So bill of exchange, what is the first step? First step is the drawer will write the bill of exchange for the drawee, and then the drawee needs to do what? He needs to accept, and therefore he will be known as acceptor. Understood? So bill of exchange is mentioned in section 5. And the example that I gave you was incredibly simple. Now tell me this thing. In this example, who is the payee? Payee is always the person who gets the benefit or the money. Payee is always the person who gets the benefit or the money. So in this case, payee is who? Payee is Gaurav only. Because I have written pay to me or my order. But I am not mentioning a third person to Ankit. So he will pay to me. So in this case, the drawer is Gaurav and the payee is also Gaurav. Because Gaurav eventually will receive the money after 80 days from Ankit. So Gaurav is both the drawer and the payee. And Ankit is who? Ankit is the drawee. Now let's increase one level, okay? In bill of exchange, there are three parties, right? One is the drawer, who is the writer. One is the drawee, who makes the payment. And one is the payee, who gets the payment. Now, I sold goods worth 10,000 to Ankit. Now let's bring in another person. His name is Adarsh Gupta. And he is also a renowned faculty and my younger brother, like a younger brother. Okay. Now, I took a loan of 10,000 last year from Adarsh. And I told him I will pay you. Okay. Now here, I need to collect 10,000 rupees from Ankit because I have sold goods worth 10,000 to Ankit. But last year, I took a loan from Adarsh 10,000. So what I can do, I can ask Ankit to pay the money to Adarsh. Okay. So now I will form a new bill of exchange. I want the payment now to be made to Adarsh instead of me. So I will modify my bill of exchange. What I will write, everything remains the same. I will write it to Ankit Agarwal. I will put my signature. I will put the amount. I will put the date and my location. And I will simply write 80 days after date. Pay to Adarsh Gupta or his order the sum of rupees 10,000 only for value received. Understood? You pay now not to me. You pay to my order, who is Adarsh Gupta, or his order. So you pay now to Adarsh Gupta or someone whom Adarsh tells you to pay to. Understood? So this is the bill of exchange. Now in this case, who is the drawer? Drawer was the person who is the writer of the bill of exchange. That was me. So drawer is Gaurav. I have written it. So I am the drawer. Who is the drawee? Ankit will pay the money in this case also. So Ankit remains the drawee. But who is the payee in this case? The payee is Adarsh Gupta. Understood? In the last case, payee was me. But in this case, because I am not receiving the money, Adarsh is receiving the money. So Adarsh becomes the payee. Incredibly simple, isn't it? It's all conceptual. So this is how a bill of exchange is made. So who are the parties in the bill of exchange? There is a drawer. Drawer is the person who draws the bill or makes the bill. So usually a drawer is also the payee. Like in the first case I told you, where I asked Ankit to pay to me. So the drawer is also the payee. His liability is primary and unconditional until the bill is accepted, when it becomes secondary and conditional. This I will explain you in a bit. What is the meaning of liability? Now let's take a look at who is a drawee. So the person on whom the bill is drawn, in this case Ankit Agarwal was the drawee. He needs to accept the bill and then he needs to give a notice to the drawer that he has accepted, and the drawee is there for the acceptor after he accepts. Therefore, he now becomes liable for the payment of the bill. His liability is primary and unconditional. And then we have a beneficiary who is the payee, the party to which the bill of exchange is payable to. He is the beneficiary or the payee. So these are the three parties in a bill of exchange. Now let's take a look at what does it mean. The liability is primary, unconditional and all of this. Very, very easy to understand. So in the example that I gave you, there were three parties. There is Gaurav, and let me write it in different colors to make it easy for you. There is Ankit and there is Adarsh. I hope this green color is visible to you. Now Gaurav is the drawer, Ankit is the drawee, and Adarsh is the payee. Understood till here? Now let's talk about liability. So Gaurav needs to pay money to Adarsh. Right? This is our condition. Gaurav needs to pay money to Adarsh. How much? 10,000. Because he borrowed from Adarsh last year. So what is Gaurav's liability right now? It is primary and unconditional. Primary and unconditional. Which means since I have taken money from him, obviously I have to pay. So there is unconditional liability and primary liability on me to pay to Adarsh. But now what I am doing is I am bringing a second player into the picture. He is Ankit. And I am asking Ankit, since you owe me money, you now pay to Adarsh. And Ankit has accepted. So my liability will be shifted now to Ankit because Ankit has accepted. Ankit needs to pay to Adarsh. Ankit is a drawee. So the liability of Ankit will be what now after acceptance? His liability will be primary and unconditional. That is what is written. The liability of the drawee is primary and unconditional. Now once Ankit has accepted, then my liability will become what? My liability will be secondary and conditional. Earlier my liability was primary and unconditional because I needed to pay to Adarsh. But now I have shifted that liability to Ankit. So Ankit's liability is now primary and unconditional, whereas my liability becomes secondary and conditional. Let's say Ankit is not able to pay the money to Adarsh on time. Then my liability will again become primary and unconditional. Understood or not understood? So remember, in case of a drawer, the liability is primary and unconditional, but when the bill is accepted by the drawee, then it becomes secondary and conditional. In case of a drawee, what happens? Drawee's liability is primary and unconditional because he is the one who needs to make the payment and beneficiary receives the money. So this is the bill of exchange. Incredibly simple. Now let's talk about endorsement. Endorsement, sometimes you will hear the word endorsement. They both mean the same. There is only a mild technical difference. For all practical purposes, they mean the same. Endorsement means when you do something publicly. Okay? And endorsement means when you do something legally. When you support something legally, that is endorsement. When you publicly do it, it is endorsement. So for example, if I say I support a political party ABC and I say it very publicly to everyone, which means I am endorsing that party. Okay. But if I join that party properly, legally, after documentation, then I am endorsing it. So endorsing is more of a legal term and endorsing is more of a public or courtesy term. Understood? So what is endorsement? If you have written a check, so let's say there is person A, he has written a check and given it to person B. Then the person B negotiates that check, he transfers it to person C. And the person C then transfers that check to person D. Very simple. What they are doing is they are endorsing it. So endorsing simply means transfer of a negotiable instrument from one person to another. So for example, if A has written a check in favor of B, then what B will do? B, on the back side of the check, he will write pay to C and he will put his signature. So then C gets the check. It is C's check now. C can encash the check. C can put it for clearing in his account if need be. And then what C can do? C can put on the back side of the check, he can write pay to D, he can put his signature. Then it becomes, he endorses it to D. So now it is D who will be the beneficiary of the check. Understood? So this is called endorsement. Endorsement simply means the transfer of the bill or promissory note or check to another person. So endorsement is one of the main features which makes negotiable instruments possible, right? Without endorsement, how else will you negotiate that instrument? Negotiate means what? Transfer. So endorsement is the process by which you negotiate an instrument or you transfer that instrument. Then we have renewal of a bill. What is the meaning of renewable? So let's say in this scenario, in this scenario, after 80 days, Ankit is not able to pay money to Adarsh. So he can come to me, Gaurav, and he can ask for more time. Please give me more time. I was not able to manage the money. I had some family issues, whatever. So he will come to me. Now in this case, I cannot change the original bill of exchange. I cannot simply say that, okay, take 40 more days. In this case, I cannot say that you convert this 80 to 120. No, once a bill of exchange is made, it is made. Then this bill of exchange I will cancel and I will write a fresh bill of exchange with a new timeline. Understood? So this is called renewal of a bill. What is renewal of a bill? When the holder of the bill is not in a position to meet the bill on its due date, then the drawee approaches the drawer with a request of extension of time for payment. If the drawer agrees, the old bill will be cancelled and the fresh bill with the new terms of payment is drawn and duly accepted and delivered. This is called renewal of the bill. Understood now? Now let's sum up. Let's take a look at the characteristics of a bill of exchange. Now, bill of exchange, I told you the example from Gaurav to Ankit to Adarsh, right? I gave you this example. So in bill of exchange, first of all, it has to be in writing, not oral. Now here, I cannot record something to Ankit and say to him, you pay to Adarsh after 80 days. No, it has to be in writing, and obviously it has to be signed by me. I showed you the example where on the bill of exchange, I signed here on the right side. So it must be signed by the person who is writing the bill or who is the drawer. It must contain an express order to pay. Okay. It must contain an express order to pay. The order to pay must be definite and unconditional. This is very important. So, for example, can I say to him that 80 days after the date, you pay to Adarsh if you are feeling well? No, that is a condition that I have put. It must be unconditional. The order to pay, it has to be definite and unconditional. The sum contained in the order must be certain. So can I write on a bill of exchange that 80 days later, you pay to Adarsh an amount between 9,000 to 12,000? No, the amount has to be certain. You can't put a limit, or you can't put a upper limit or lower limit like that. You can't put a uncertain sum, because from 9,000 to 12,000, there can be a lot of possibilities, right? So the amount has to be certain. It has to be a number. So the sum contained in the order must be certain. The order must be to pay money only. This is also important. So on a bill of exchange, can I say to Ankit that after 80 days, you pay to Adarsh 1 kg rice and 2 cows you give to him in lieu of the 10,000 that you owe me? No, nothing like that. There is no barter that is allowed. The order must be to pay money only. The drawer, drawee and payee, they must be certain. Okay, their names have to be written on the bill of exchange, all the three: drawer, drawee and payee. A bill of exchange must be stamped. Okay, there has to be a stamp on the bill of exchange. And a bill of exchange cannot be originally made as payable to the bearer on demand. Very, very important. What is the meaning of payable to bearer? Payable to bearer. What is the meaning of payable to bearer? For example, let's say you have a 500 rupee note. You have a 500 rupee note. And this 500 rupee note, you lose it. You are traveling in a train and it falls from your pocket. This 500 rupee note. Now somebody picks it up. Mr. X picks the note up. Can he use this 500 rupee note? Yes, he can. Why? Because it is payable to the bearer. Anybody who has that 500 rupee note, anybody who is the bearer of that note can take its value. Because on 500 rupee note it is written, I promise to pay to the bearer a sum of 500 rupees. Anybody who is in possession of this 500 rupee note will get the benefit or will get a value of 500 rupee. Understood? This is called the payable to bearer. But a bill of exchange and a promissory note, both, they cannot be made payable to the bearer. Why? Because if they are made payable to the bearer, they will be equal to the currency of the country, which we cannot allow. Okay, which we cannot allow. So that is why the name of the drawer, drovee, and the payee, they have to be written. So for example, in the case that I told you, I asked Ankit to pay to Adarsh, right? So Ankit is the drovee, Adarsh is the payee. It is written. Now if that bill of exchange is lost, then can any person, let's say Ramesh, can he get any benefit from that bill of exchange? No, because it is not payable to the bearer. Understood? Yes, Ramesh can get an advantage only if he is endorsed. If he is endorsed by the payee. Understood? So for example, if Adarsh says to Ankit, you are paying to me, but instead of me, you pay to Ramesh. Because I wrote 80 days later, you pay to Adarsh or his order. Now Adarsh's order is that to Ankit, you pay to Ramesh. So then Ramesh gets the benefit. But it is not like anybody who is bearing that bill of exchange gets to encash it. No. Because then it will become currency only, no. So it is not payable to the bearer. And this is as per the section 31 of the RBI Act of 1931. The section 31 of the RBI Act of 1934 prohibits a bill of exchange or a promissory note to be payable to the bearer. Very, very important. Now, if anybody can make it a bearer instrument, it is only RBI or central government. So for example, if on a normal currency note it is written, I promise to pay to the bearer a sum of 500 rupees, this is by the governor of the RBI. This is by the RBI or the central government. Only they have the right to convert a promissory note or a bill of exchange payable to the bearer and not any person or any citizen of India. Understood? So this is the bill of exchange. I hope bill of exchange is now absolutely crystal clear to you. Okay, bill of exchange is crystal clear to you. Now let's come to the second one, which is promissory note, which is incredibly easy. In fact, promissory note is the easiest. Promissory note, break it down. Note is what? Simple, it's a document, note, you are writing something. And promissory means what? You are making a promise. You are making a promise. Now let me give you the same example, okay? Gaurav sold goods worth 10,000 to Ankit. Okay. Now in bill of exchange, what was happening? I was making the bill of exchange. I was the creditor. But in this case, Ankit, what Ankit will do? So in bill of exchange, I was making the bill of exchange and then Ankit was accepting it, right? This was happening. But in this case, Ankit knows that he needs to owe me the money. So instead of a bill of exchange, which I make, Ankit will write to me directly. Ankit will say that I, Ankit, son of Mr. So-and-so, promise to pay Gaurav Garg, son of so-and-so, right, this much rupees after these many days, and I will also pay him an interest of, let's say, this % per annum, and he will put a sign. So what is the meaning of this? It means that Ankit is giving me a written promise that, let's say, after 80 days, he will give me the money 10,000 rupees and he will send it to me. So this is called a promissory note. In a promissory note, there are only two parties. Which parties are there? So one we call the maker. In a promissory note, there are two parties. One is the maker. Maker is the person who is writing that instrument. Now in this case, instrument is a promissory note, and any person who writes an instrument is the drawer. So in this case, who is the drawer? In this case, Ankit is the drawer because he is the writer. He is the drawer. Okay, he is the maker. And he is telling me, Gaurav, I will give you the money, I promise, after 80 days. So I am the payee, I am the beneficiary. So payee is the person to whom the money is to be paid, and payee is always the person who is the beneficiary. So in promissory note, it is incredibly simple. There are just two parties. One person who is promising you, he is the drawer, he is the writer, and he is the debtor, because his liability is primary and unconditional. He is the debtor, no, he is under debt of mine. He has to pay me 10,000 rupees. So he is the debtor. I am the creditor. Understood? So what is the main difference between a bill of exchange and a promissory note? A bill of exchange is written by the creditor. When bill of exchange was made, it was me, Gaurav Garg, who wrote the bill of exchange. And then Ankit accepted. But in a promissory note, the person who owes the money, or who is the maker or the debtor or the drawer, the person who owes me the money will write it. So a promissory note is written by not the creditor, but by the debtor. Understood? This is the main difference. And promissory note is incredibly simple. The person who has to pay the money, he writes himself, I promise to pay you after 80 days. Understood promissory note? How easy it is. Now let's see what are the characteristics of a promissory note. A promissory note has to be necessarily in writing, same as bill of exchange. Both the bill of exchange and promissory note, they have to be in writing, print or handwritten. An oral promise is not a valid promissory note. Then a promissory note must contain an undertaking or promise to pay. Mere acknowledgement of debt is not sufficient. So for example, if Ankit writes a promissory note, if he writes, Gaurav, I acknowledge that I have to pay you 10,000. Is that sufficient? No. Until and unless you write that I promise to pay, it is not sufficient. You have to write, I promise you to pay. You have to not just acknowledge, but you have to also promise to pay. So merely acknowledgement of the debt is not sufficient. Definite and unconditional. The promise to pay should be unconditional and certain. So the liability of a maker or a debtor has to be primary and unconditional. And it has to be signed by the maker or the drawer. A promissory note should be signed by the maker himself and his or his agent who has the authority to make a promissory note on his behalf. So a promissory note should be signed by the maker himself. Understood? Now in the examples that I gave you, if you compare, it becomes very easy. And I will repeat it once more. The promissory note must specify the payee in clear terms. Where the name of the payee is not mentioned, the instrument will become invalid. Again, very, very important. Name of the payee has to be written. So Ankit has to write that I will pay to Gaurav. Okay. The sum of money has to be certain. Again, same as bill of exchange. The sum of money has to be certain. There can't be a range or anything like that. Amount has to be certain. Again, there will be money only and nothing else. There will be no barter or no exchange or nothing like that. There will be money only. It has to be stamped and dated, right? So it has to be stamped, stamp has to be put, and it has to be dated. And if it is not dated, then it is presumed to be made on the date of delivery, right? So if you have not put a date, then on the day Ankit sends the promissory note to Gaurav, the day of delivery will be considered as the date of forming that promissory note. And again, it is not payable to the bearer. Understood? Same, because RBI Act prohibits it to be payable to the bearer. Understood? Only the RBI or the central government has the power to make it payable to the bearer. Now, Ankit is writing a promissory note, and I have given you 4 options. Which one is correct? Which one is acceptable language of the promissory note? So Ankit is writing on the promissory note, I acknowledge myself to be indebted to Gaurav in 10,000 rupees to be paid on demand for value received. Is that a good way to write? Yes, that is a good way to write. Okay, so he is saying that yes, I am indebted to Gaurav 10,000 rupees and I will pay to him for the value that I have already received. Second option, I promise to pay Gaurav 10,000 rupees and all other sums which shall be due to him. Now, this is not acceptable. Why? Yes, he is making a promise to pay 10,000, but then he is also writing and all other sums. You can't write and all other sums. If there are any other sum you need to pay, you mention that. For example, if 3 months back or 2 months back, Ankit owed me 5,000 rupees more, and if he wants to pay me both, he can say, I promise to pay Gaurav 10,000 rupees for the goods purchased on this date and 5,000 rupees for the goods purchased 2 months back. But he can't write all other sums. The amount has to be certain. This is not certain. Who knows what all the other sums are? The amount has to be certain. So this is not acceptable. I promise to pay Gaurav rupees 10,000, first deducting thereout any money which he may owe me. Again, this is not acceptable, because he is saying, I will pay Gaurav 10,000, but I will cut from this 10,000 that money which Gaurav owes me. Now, what is that money? You need to mention. You just can't write, I will deduct the money that Gaurav owes me. You need to mention what that amount is. So, for example, if I owe Ankit 2,000, then it's okay. You pay me 8,000. You mention it. But you can't write any money which he may owe me. What is any money? You have to be certain of the amount. Now, so this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. And this was fine. Now, let's see the option D. I promise to pay Gaurav 10,000 rupees 7 days after my marriage with Shilpi. Now, this is a condition. The order to pay, then you are promised to pay. You are promising to pay in a promissory note. It has to be unconditional. What if your marriage with Shilpi is postponed? There can be n number of possibilities. So, I will not keep sitting here and waiting for you that first you get married with Shilpi and that after 7 days later you will give me my money. It doesn't work like that. This is also not acceptable. There is a condition attached to it. It has to be unconditional. So this is how questions can come. Okay, and obviously we will do MCQ practice. I told you that after every 4 videos I will make a bonus video for the premium users where I will discover the MCQs related to those 4 videos that were completed. I hope you have understood the promissory note now. Now, if I have to teach you the differences between the bill of exchange and promissory note, are you in a position to do it now? Very easy. Bill of exchange is issued by the creditor, and just one example is sufficient. The one I told you, Gaurav to Ankit to Adarsh. Okay, this is the example I told you. And in the promissory note, the same example was there, Gaurav to Ankit, because in a promissory note there are only 2 parties. So in a promissory note there was no Adarsh. Understood? So bill of exchange was written by whom? I was the drawer. In other words, the creditor is the one who wrote the bill of exchange. Gaurav is in this case the drawer, writer, or the creditor. Promissory note is written by the person who has to pay. So it is issued by the debtor. In this case, Ankit is the debtor. And Ankit in this case is also the drawer because he is writing the instrument. Anyone who writes the instrument is a drawer. So drawer in this case is Ankit, whereas drawer in this case is Gaurav. So promissory note is written by the debtor and bill of exchange is written by the creditor. Number 1, the most important difference is this. Then in a bill of exchange, there are 3 parties. The drawer, drawee, and the payee. Okay, the drawer, drawee, and the payee. And in a lot of cases, the drawer and the payee can be same. So in the example that I gave you, where Ankit is returning money to me, I was the drawer and I was the beneficiary or payee. In a promissory note, only the 2 parties are involved. There is a drawer or the maker or the writer of the instrument, and there is the beneficiary. The drawee needs to accept the bill of exchange before payment. So I sent the bill of exchange to Ankit and Ankit needs to accept it. But no acceptance is required from the drawee in this case, because In this case, the drawee himself is the writer or the drawer. Understood? So there is no acceptance. When he is himself saying, I promise you to pay, what more can he accept? The liability of the drawer is secondary and conditional. Why? Because the liability has been shifted to the drawee. So the liability of the drawer is secondary and conditional because I shifted the responsibility of paying to Adarsh to Ankit. So Ankit's liability is now primary and unconditional. My liability will be secondary and conditional. Whereas in this case, the liability of Ankit is primary and absolute, or liability of the drawer is primary and absolute. The difference is that in this case, drawer is me. In this case, drawer is Ankit. Understood? Then bill of exchange is mentioned in section 5 of the Negotiable Instruments Act, and a promissory note is mentioned in section 4 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. Bill of exchange can have copies. Promissory note allows no copies. And the same person can be drawer and payee. So here in the example, Gaurav was the drawer and Gaurav was the payee also. Understood? Whereas here, the drawer and the payee cannot be the same person because these are the only two parties. Drawer is the person who is under debt. He is the debtor. In this case, Ankit. And payee is me. So me and Ankit cannot be the same person. The same person cannot be the drawer and payee in case of a promissory note. I hope now you are absolutely crystal clear with a bill of exchange and a promissory note. And I have covered all the questions also, all the sections also. Now let's come to the most difficult, which is the check. But there is one advantage when you study check, because you are familiar with check. You may have written a check yourself, or you may have accepted a check from someone. Understood? Someone may have written a check to you. So checks are relatively familiar, but I'm pretty sure that in your entire life thus far you would have not written a bill of exchange or a promissory note. So let's start with check now. So a check is governed by section 6 of the Negotiable Instruments Act of 1881. And how do you define a check? So check is a bill of exchange drawn on a specified banker and note expressed to be payable otherwise than on demand. The Amendment Act of 2002 has broadened the definition of a check by including the electronic image of a truncated check and check in the electronic form, also known as e-check. What does this all mean? Let me simplify it for you. You have seen a check, you have signed a check, you have probably gotten a check from someone in your name. Different possibilities are there. But do you know that a check is a bill of exchange? So what is the difference between a bill of exchange and a check? I gave you the example Gaurav, Ankit, Adarsh, right, for the bill of exchange. Now here I was the drawer, Ankit was the drawee, and Adarsh was the payee. Now let's say, and what was the overall picture? I had to return Adarsh 10,000 rupees money that I borrowed from him last year. And through the bill of exchange, I was doing it through Ankit because Ankit owes me 10,000 rupees. Now, in this case also, I will be the drawer. I will give a check. And instead of Ankit giving the money to Adarsh, it is the bank that will give money to Adarsh. That is the only difference. So in a bill of exchange, this was the bill of exchange. And what is a check? Gaurav to bank to Adarsh. Which means in a check, the drawee is always a bank. It is not a person. Understood? So I will write a check to Adarsh. He will put it for clearing. In this case, the drawee, because drawee is always a person who pays the amount. In a bill of exchange, the drawee was Ankit, which means the drawee was a person. The only difference is that between a bill of exchange and a check, that in the case of a check, the drovey is always a bank, because the bank will give money now to Adarsh and not a person. That is the only difference. So a check is nothing but a bill of exchange drawn on a specified banker. Understood? And now what happened was, earlier the check was only a paper check like you and me, we both use today. We get a checkbook from a bank which has multiple checks. You can also call the checks as leaf. You take out a leaf from a checkbook means what? You take out a check from a checkbook. But what happened was, the Negotiable Instruments Act, it was amended in 2002 and it broadened the definition of a check. So now even a electronic check, also called as e-check. So check sometimes can be written like this also, check. But more commonly in Indian books you will see the check written like this. Both are acceptable. E-check or a truncated check, they both are also checks. So what does this mean? First let's talk about a check in the electronic form, also known as e-check. So section 6A defines it as a check which contains the exact mirror image of a paper check and is generated, written and signed in a secure system, ensuring the minimum safety standards with the use of digital signature. Now, instead of using a paper, what if you put all the same columns on a website and you ask the person who is writing the check or who is a drawer to fill the details online instead of a paper and put his digital signature? Let me show you how. So this is how it is done. Right, this is how it is done. All the details you put here and then you put your digital signature and then you download it in the form of a PDF and then you email to someone you want to pay, or you email it to the payee, and then the payee will encash it. Understood? So this is how a e-check works. So e-check is what? There is no paper involved in a e-check. Entire filling is done electronically and digital signature is done. And let me also tell you why Negotiable Instrument Act was amended in 2002. Because in 2002 we also had the IT Act of 2002, Information Technology Act. And in the IT Act of 2002, the electronic form and digital signature, they were recognized. That is why the definition of a check was broadened. So a check in the electronic form or a e-check is also a check. Understood? The only difference is that you are filling this check, filling it up completely electronically, digitally, and you are putting your digital signature. Now let's come to the second type of check, which is a truncated check. Now truncated check is defined by section 6B and it is completely different. So how does the check truncation system work? You need to understand this. Let me read out the definition for you once. It means a check which is truncated during the course of a clearing cycle, either by the clearinghouse or by the bank, whether paying or receiving payment immediately on generation of an electronic image, on transmission, substituting the further physical movement of the check in writing. Now let me simplify it for you and let me tell you how the entire process works. So let me show you an image, then you will understand. So let's say I have an account in HDFC Bank. I am Gaurav, and yes, I have an account in HDFC Bank, no doubt about it. This is the only bank that I use. And I write a check to Ankit, who has an account in SBI. Okay. So I am Gaurav. I have an account in HDFC Bank, and Ankit is there and he has an account in SBI Bank. Okay, let's take an example that we took where Gaurav sold goods worth 10,000 to Ankit. Okay, so let me take this example, because let's keep the example similar so that you are able to verify, cross verify, and you can relate better. So in this case, Ankit owes me money. Ankit owes me money. So Ankit will say to me, Gaurav, I don't have money right now, but I can give you a post-dated check. Okay. or I will make the payment through check. I said, okay, give, fine. So Ankit, he will give a check to me. He will write a check in my name that pay to Gaurav Garg. Okay. He will put his signature, Ankit, and he will write the amount, which is 10,000 rupees. He will write it in both digits and in words. And now he gives the check to me. But be careful, this check is of the State Bank of India because Ankit's account is in State Bank of India. So he will get a checkbook from State Bank of India. He will fill it up and he gives me this check. Now I have an account in HDFC Bank. Okay. So in this case, who is the person who is the drawer? A drawer is always the writer. Who is writing the check? Ankit is writing the check. So Ankit is the drawer. He is giving the check to me. I am the beneficiary. So I am the payee. So Gaurav Garg is the payee. Now I have this check which Ankit gave me in my hands. I will go to my bank. Now be careful. This check, I will go to my bank, which is the presenting bank. You can also call it the collecting bank because it will collect the money. Okay. And a drawee bank is the one which will make the payment. A drawee always makes the payment. So the payment will be made from State Bank of India to my account HDFC. So in this case, this drawee bank is the State Bank of India. Understood? And presenting bank is my bank, HDFC Bank. Right? So what I can do is pan India, in the entire India, I can go to any branch of HDFC because I have an account in HDFC. I can go to any branch of HDFC and I can put this check in a box. So banks have a box in which you put the check for clearing. So what is the next process? HDFC Bank will take that check. HDFC Bank will take a photograph, will scan it, okay, and convert it into a photograph. And this photograph is what you call the truncated check. Understood? So of that paper check which Ankit gave me, its photograph will be sent to the clearing house, and clearing house will then send that photograph to the drawee bank, in this case SBI, and that SBI will, but SBI will do now, SBI will verify everything. It will verify all the details of the check. It will verify the signature of Ankit. It will make sure everything is correct. Check number and MICR data, everything it will verify, and then it will release money. This money will then come to the collecting bank or the presenting bank HDFC, and then HDFC will give the money to my account. It will credit the money to my account. Understood? This is how the check clearing works. In which bank you have to put the check for clearing? It is the presenting bank or collecting bank, or simply the bank in which you have an account. You put it in that. Now earlier what used to happen, HDFC sent the physical copy of the check to the SBI in the old days, but it was a very lengthy procedure. The physical copy of the check was carried from HDFC Bank to SBI or from the collecting bank to the drawee bank, and then the drawee bank will verify all the detail, and that is how the process was there. It was a lengthy process and there was a risk also. What was the risk? In the transit or in the commute, the check might get lost. All of these risks were there, and the clearing was very delayed. It used to take like 10 to 12 days sometimes to clear a check. Understood? Now it takes only like 1 to 2 days or 3 days maximum. So how the time has been shortened? Now HDFC Bank will not send the physical copy to the SBI, but it will send only the photograph scanned. It will scan it, and let me tell you what actually happens in practicality. They say that if you put the check for clearing before 11 AM, then it will be cleared the next day itself. Why? Because usually at 11 AM, the banks, they take the scan of all the checks which are there in the box, and then they send the scanned copies to the clearing house. Clearing house is RBI's clearing house, which basically is responsible for clearing of the checks. And then it will, clearing house basically coordinates between the collecting bank or presenting bank and the drawee bank. In fact, sometimes you may get a call also that, did you issue a check to this person? We have recently got a query. So that call is not done by the HDFC Bank, that is done by the clearing house. Understood? So clearing house is the one that coordinates between both the banks. So now the drawee banks will see, okay, everything is good, signature is fine, everything is fine, all the details we have matched, we have verified, it will release the money. So the money is paid by the drovey always. So the drovey bank will pay the money to the collecting bank, and collecting bank will then give the money or put the money into the account of the payee. So this is how a check is cleared. I hope you have understood. Now this is what is a scanned copy of a check looks like. Imagine that this check was filled up. So this is how a scanned copy looks like. It is just a photo of the paper check. So what is the difference between a e-check and a truncated check? E-check is completely different. The paper thing is not related at all. You fill the details electronically, digitally, put your digital sign, that is a e-check. But a scanned check or a truncated check is the photograph of a paper check, which is useful for faster clearing. So it is used for faster clearing. So this is the truncated check. So truncated check is also a check. So section 6b defines a truncated check. I hope you have understood now. Now let me tell you an important concept, which is the order or bearer. A check can be two types. Okay, now look carefully. Look at this check. Okay, look at this check, and you can see here it is written or order. Whereas if you see this check, it is written or bearer. What is the difference? Let me tell you, it is very, very interesting. Let's say you fill up this check. How do you fill this check? You put the date. So today when I am recording this video, it is 21st of March 2022. So let's say you have written here 25 you have written 2503 2022, which means that you can encash this check on this date. It is a post-dated check. It is a post-dated check. Okay, which means the date is sometimes in the future. You are paying to Mr. Amit. You have written his name, Amit Gupta. You are paying to him. It is better to cross this extra space. Okay, rupees 10,000. Now here obviously you have to write in words. You write 10,000 only, and then you cross this space. It is not required. And here you put the digits 10,000. That is how you fill it, and you put your sign. So I am putting my sign here. Understood? So this is how you fill up a check. Now who can encash it? Now I am telling you a normal scenario. Okay, I am not telling you I have crossed the check or whatever. Let's take a look at normal scenario. I have filled up a check. It is a normal check. I want to give 10,000 rupees to Amit Gupta. Understood? I have an account in ICICI Bank. So this is a check of ICICI Bank, and I am giving 10,000 rupees to Amit Gupta through the check. Very simple. And 4 days later he can get the money, because the date is 25th of March 2022 and today it is 21st of March 2022. First of all, till when he can take the money? He can put the check for clearing whenever he wants. He can put it even today, but it will be processed only on 25th of March, not before that. Till when he can get the money? Till when means what? Till when is the check viable? 3 months. It is written here also, valid for 3 months only. Now in old days, the check used to be valid for 6 months, but there was an amendment that was made and the period was reduced to 3 months. So in general scenario, in a normal scenario, any check is valid for 3 months. So if the date is 25th of March 2022, then 25th March to 25th April to 25th May to 25th June. So till 25th of June 2022 it is valid. So that means Amit Gupta can put the check for clearing in a bank till 25th of June. Okay. And after that it becomes a stale check. If he does not encash the check in the time period, within the time frame, it becomes a stale check. STALE, stale check. I hope this is absolutely clear to you. Till when he can encash the check. Now let's come to a very important concept, which is by order, or bearer. What is the difference between the two? Let's first talk about order. So here I am basically saying to the bank please pay Amit Gupta or order, or someone Amit Gupta wishes. I repeat, the bank, I am saying to the bank, you pay to Amit Gupta or his order. So if Amit Gupta wants, he can negotiate this check. He can transfer this check to a person as per his order. So what Amit Gupta can do, on the back side of the check, okay, usually it is on the back side. So on the back side of the check, let's say Amit Gupta wants to give money 10,000 to someone called Sandeep. So he simply will write pay to Sandeep and he will put his sign, Amit Gupta. So now this check can be encashed by Sandeep because this is the order of Amit Gupta. So Amit Gupta has done what? He has endorsed this check to Sandeep. Because I said pay to Amit Gupta or order. So Amit Gupta can write his order on the back side of the check. He can say pay to Sandeep and he can put his signature. So this is one way by which the check can be negotiated or transferred from one person to another. Understood or not understood? So if I want that only Amit Gupta should receive the money and Amit cannot endorse to someone, what I need to do? I simply need to cut this part. So when filling, I will cross it or order. So now only Amit Gupta can receive the money or order I have cancelled, which means I have now restricted the endorsability. Now Amit Gupta cannot give it to anyone else. Understood or not? Amit Gupta cannot transfer it to anyone else. I have crossed here or order. So it is only Amit now who can get the money. Clear or not clear? Now let's take a look at the second condition here, or bearer. Now I have an account in Canara Bank and I want to pay 10,000 rupees to Amit Gupta. So I will write pay to Mr. Amit Gupta and I will fill here 10,000 rupees, same as last time, 10,000 rupees only. I will put my sign here and I will write the date 25th of March 2022. Now here, who can encash the check? Who can encash? Since it is written or bearer, which means anyone who has the check can encash it. Okay, so this is highly risky because it is a bearer check. Okay, it is a bearer. So anybody who has this check, I am writing pay Amit Gupta or anyone who is the bearer. So it is a bearer check. Anybody who has this check, Amit Gupta need not endorse it. For example, if Amit Gupta wants that Sandeep should get the money, he need not write it on the back side of the check, pay to Sandeep and put his signature. Because this is a bearer check, he can simply give this check to Sandeep and say, go to the bank and take the money. Because it is written or bearer. Now Sandeep has this. Sandeep is the bearer of the instrument. Sandeep has it. Sandeep holds this check. So Sandeep will go to the bank and he can encash it. Even without the endorsement of Amit Gupta. This is the difference between or order or bearer. Understood? A bearer check, anybody who has it can encash it. But if it is written or order, then it is only with the endorsement of the payee that you can take advantage of it. Understood? A order check will need to be endorsed for someone to take the money. Whereas a bearer will not need an endorsement. Anybody who is in the possession can get it encashed. I hope this is absolutely clear. This was a very, very important point for you to understand. So always see whether you have written or order or bearer. In fact, yesterday I opened my checkbook, and in my checkbook it was written or order, but in my wife's checkbook it was written or bearer. So you can ask the bank whether you want a bearer check. A bearer check is very convenient, but it is very risky also. Okay, because anybody who has the check. So for example, if Amit Gupta loses the check, or he or someone steals the check, he can get it encashed because he is the bearer. Understood or not understood? So this is an important concept. Now I told you check truncation system. Check truncation system was what? The collecting bank sent only the scanned copy of the check or truncated check and not the physical copy to the drawee bank. This was the check truncation system. How to find out whether your check is CTS compliant or not? It is very easy. You take a look at the check that you have, and here in this column it is written CTS 2010, which means check truncation system 2010. So if the letters CTS 2010 are present in this column here, then your checkbook is CTS 2010 compliant. Understood? Now of course most of the checkbooks are CTS compliant. And now let's take a look at the part of the check. So you can see here, this is your check number. It is a 6-digit number. So for example, if this check is 730070, this is the check number. The next check will be 730071. The next will be 730072, etc. So this is in continuity. This is the check number, and this is a 9-digit number, which is the MICR number. Okay, extremely important. This is the MICR number, which helps in reading of the check. So let me tell you more about it now. Let's come to the check truncation system. Check truncation system is an image-based clearing system because you are taking the photograph of the check. So it is an image-based clearing system in India, and it is a project of the RBI for faster clearing of the checks. Easy. Check truncation system is based on a check truncation or online image-based check clearing system where check images are magnetic. Check images and MICR data are captured at the collecting bank branch and transmitted electronically. So one example I gave you, this example, here the HDFC Bank is scanning the check at 11 AM and sending that data to the clearing house, and clearing house that sends the data to the drawee bank. So that is exactly what data is sent. It is the MICR data. So the check images and MICR data is captured. Magnetic ink character recognition, or MICR. So then check truncation system, we call it CTS 2010. If the MCQ comes, check truncation system came into effect in which year? The answer is 2010. However, the first grid to become CTS compliant or CTS was implemented first in New Delhi, even before that on 1st of February 2008. Earlier what used to happen, let me tell you, there were 66 MICR centers in India, and it was a very long process for clearing of the check because earlier the MICR data was the only way. The physical copy of the check was sent from the collecting bank to the drawee bank, and the MICR data was scanned. But now in the check truncation system, it is not only the MICR data, but the entire check is scanned. Okay, so it is a much faster process. And earlier what used to happen was there were 66 MICR centers and the process was very lengthy. But now we have done away with these 66 MICR center, and what we have done is converted them to 3 grid. A grid is a place where multiple data comes. That is called a grid. So for example, you have a power grid. What is a power grid? Here the power from different sources is collected. Similarly, all the data of check is now collected by grid. Understood? So where is this grid present? In India, there are 3 grids: New Delhi grid, Mumbai grid, and Chennai grid. New Delhi grid is for these states or union territories. Mumbai grid is for these, and Chennai grid is for these. Now we have only 3 grid in India, right? And it has made the job incredibly easy. So there is the New Delhi, there is the Mumbai, and there is the Chennai grid. Which was the first grid where CTS was implemented? It is the New Delhi grid in 1st of February 2008. The second was the Chennai grid. In Chennai grid in September 24, 2011, and in Mumbai grid, CTS was introduced in 2013 on 27th of April. Understood? Which was the first grid in India to have check truncation system? It is the New Delhi grid in 2008. So now the traditional MICR based check processing has been discontinued because it was very time consuming, and MICR based check processing, we required the MICR based data to be sent to 66 MICR centers, which was a lengthy process. So now what we do, we follow the CTS system and not the MICR system. Now we follow the check truncation system. Yes, in check truncation system also we read the MICR data, but earlier it was only MICR data which was used. So as I said, 66 MICR check processing location, they were consolidated into 3 grids in New Delhi, Chennai and Mumbai. Understood how the check truncation system works? Now let's learn more about the MICR code. So MICR code is a code printed on the check using MICR, magnetic ink character recognition technology. This enables identification of the check, and which in turn means faster processing. So MICR is a 9-digit code that uniquely identifies the bank and branch participating in electronic clearing system. So let me give you a practical example. I stay in Gurugram, which is in Haryana. Very near to my home, there is a bank, State Bank of India, Sector 4 branch. Okay. So I went to the website of SBI and found out about their IFSC code and MICR code. Okay. Now IFSC code is used only for your digital transaction, the NEFT, the RTGS, IMPS and all that. IFSC code will be used only for that. MICR code and IFSC code is how many digits? You can see here. IFSC code. This last 5 digits represent the branch, and the first 5 they will represent the bank, and then you have this digit here which is always 0. So there will be 11 digits, alphanumeric. There are alphabets and there are digits both, alphanumeric in IFSC code. But in a MICR code, all are digits only. There is no alphabet, first of all. And MICR code is 9 digits. And you break it down into 3 parts. So for example, here it is 110-002-383. Now this hyphen is not here. This hyphen is not here. I am just telling you to explain it, okay? Just to break it down. So this is the first part, this is the second part, and this is the third part, right? The first 3 digits, they represent the city. So they represent Gurgaon. They represent Gurgaon. So MICR code for all the other banks will also start with 110 because it corresponds to Gurgaon. Then the next 3 digits, they will represent the bank, SBI. So for any branch of SBI, if you see the MICR code, the between 3 digits, middle 3 digits will be same, 002, because this represents the SBI. And the last 3 digits will represent the branch. Understood? So MICR, the first 3 digits represent the city, next 3 digits represent the bank, and the last 3 digits represent the branch. So this is the MICR code which is there on the check. And I told you all the checks are bill of exchange, but all the bill of exchange are not checks. Why? Because in a bill of exchange, the drawee is a person, whereas in case of a check, the drawee is a bank. So all the checks are bill of exchange. The only difference is that all the bill of exchange are not checks, because in a bill of exchange, the drawee is a person. So which bill of exchange will be check? Where those bill of exchange where the drawee is a bank will act as a check. Understood? Okay. Now there is something open check and a cross check. This is an extremely important concept. What is a open check? What is a cross check? So let me first tell you what is a open check. So let's say this one. Now you have written a check. You want to pay. Now this website from where I took this photograph was Teach Lane. But okay, let's say you want to pay Amit Gupta. Okay. So you want to pay Amit Gupta 5,000 rupees. This is a check. You have put your signature. Everything is fine. So Amit Gupta can go to the bank and he can take cash in return of the check. He can submit the check, take the cash and come back. So this is an open check. This is an open check. A open check is the check in return of which you can take cash from the bank. Understood? And if Amit Gupta, he endorses Sandeep, right? Written or order, right? You have not crossed or order. Or order is there. So if Amit Gupta writes on the back of the check, pay to Sandeep, and he puts his signature, then Sandeep can take this check, he can go to the bank and he can also get cash in return. Or whoever Sandeep endorses further, that person can also take it and get cash in return. Now, obviously, if you want the person should not get the cash, then you simply cross it like this. You put two transverse lines like this. Then what will happen? Then Amit Gupta or someone of his order to someone he endorses, it is still endorsable check. Amit Gupta can still endorse it to anyone. Understood? But whoever he endorses it to or Amit himself, they can get the money only in now their bank account. They cannot get cash. They cannot get cash in return. The money will go to their bank account. So this crossing was introduced basically to prevent frauds. Now just imagine if Amit Gupta, someone steals, let's suppose it is a bearer check. So it is written or bearer. And someone steals this check from Amit Gupta. He can go to the bank and take the cash and we will never find out who that person was because there is no trail. Anybody who is a bearer, so bank will not need to check the ID of that person, right? Bank will only check the ID of the person if Amit himself is going, because bank will need to make sure that this person is Amit Gupta. So in those cases, sometimes the bank checks the identity. But in case of a bearer check, anybody can take the cash. But if we have crossed it, now if somebody steals the check, even if he has stolen it, yes, it will go, he will get the money, but not in cash. He will get it in his bank account. So if you file a FIR, there are records. We can easily track that to which bank account the money was debited. From this account, it was credited to which account, so that we can find out easily. Understood? So it is more secure. So if you put a cross here, then the money will only go to the bank account. Somebody cannot get cash in return. So what is the difference between an open check and a closed check? Cross check. Open check is a check which is capable of being paid over the counter by the collecting bank whenever presented by the payee. Over the counter. Okay. A cross check, on the other hand, is a check which can only be paid through a monetary deposit in the account of the holder rather than over the counter cash payment. So who are the parties in a check is defined by section 7. So there is a drawer. The person who draws a check, basically who writes the check, is the drawer. So if I am giving a check to Ankit, then I am the drawer. Anybody who writes the check is a drawer. So he is the maker of the check and his liability is primary and unconditional. It is unconditional. Make it unconditional. Drawee, it will always be the bank. The bank on whom the check is drawn. The drawee is the bank who makes the payment, also called the drawee bank. And payee. Payee will be the one in whose favor the check is made. Payee can be the drawer himself or it can be third party. What is the meaning of the word? A payee can be the drawer himself. So if I write a self check, okay, if I want some money to be taken from my bank account in cash, there is one way. I can go to the ATM and I can withdraw, but there is one more way. I can write a self check and I can withdraw the money from my account. In this case, I am the payee also because I am the beneficiary of the money. So the drawer and the payee can be one person, right? Or they can be different. Okay. So what are the characteristics of a check? Since a check is a bill of exchange, it must contain all the essential of a valid bill of exchange. All the things that we talked about in bill of exchange, they also apply to a check. A check is a peculiar type of negotiable instrument in the sense that it does not require acceptance. A bill of exchange which I gave to Ankit had to accept it, right? So the drawee needs to accept the bill of exchange, but in a check, there is no acceptance required. It is always drawn on a specified banker. A banker includes any person acting as a banker or any post office saving bank. I told you that in the case of a check, the drawee is always a banker. A check is always payable on demand. What is the meaning of this? A check is always payable on demand. So if I have written a check in favor of Ankit, it will not be encashed until and unless Ankit submits it into a bank. So it is payable on demand. When Ankit demands it, only then it will be payable. Just because I have signed a check or I have filled up a check completely and signed it does not mean that Ankit will get the money automatically. Ankit has to take the check, he has to put it in clearing, he has to go to the bank and put it in clearing. So only on demand the money will be payable. Now what are the differences between a check and a bill of exchange? In the case of a check, the drawee is always a banker, which is not so in the bill of exchange, right? This we have cleared. No days of grace are allowed in a case of a check. Very important point. So in a bill of exchange and in a promissory note, there is a 3 days grace period. So for example, if I, in a bill of exchange, in my example, Gaurav to Ankit to Adarsh. This was the example that I gave you. So Gaurav, I raised a bill of exchange for Ankit. I told him after 80 days, you pay me or my order 10,000 rupees. And Ankit accepted. Understood? So in 80 days, automatically there is a 3 days grace period, which means that after 80 days are over, Ankit can still pay me in these 3 days. 3 days is the grace period. It is automatically added. So if it is 80 days, it is automatically becomes 83 days. But in case of a check, there is no grace period. There is no grace period. Understood? So no days of grace are allowed in case of a check. In the case of dishonor of a check, notice of dishonor is not necessary. A check can be drawn to bearer and made payable on demand, whereas a bill cannot be bearer if it is made payable on demand. Very important. I told you that the bill of exchange and promissory note, both of them, they cannot be payable to the bearer. Understood? They cannot be payable to the bearer. But we just saw that there is a bearer check. Anybody who has it can get the benefit. Anybody who has it becomes the payee. So a check can act as a bearer, payable to bearer. Understood? No acceptance is required in a check. It only needs to be presented for payment. Whereas a bill of exchange needs to be accepted by whom? By the drawee. Checks, they don't require to be stamped in India, whereas a bill of exchange and promissory note, they both need to be stamped. A check may be crossed, whereas a bill cannot be crossed. And the payment of a check you can stop. So for example, if I have given a check to someone for 5th of April 2022, it is a post-dated check because today is only 21st of March 2022. Before 5th of April, I can go to the bank and I can stop the payment of the check. I can tell the bank, this is the check number, please stop the payment. It is available electronically also, digitally, or you can go to the bank. So a check, unlike a bill, is a revocable mandate. You can revoke the payment of a check. So these are the differences between a check and a bill of exchange. I hope this is absolutely crystal clear. Now let's take a look at some other concepts of a check. Holder. Holder is defined in section 8, and then there is someone known as holder in due course, which is defined by section 9. So these both are basically the titles. Who is a holder? Let's say I have given Ankit a check of 10,000 rupees. So this check is with Ankit. Yes. So possession is with whom? Possession is with Ankit. Is he entitled also to the check? Yes, because his name is there. So to become a holder, of a promissory note or bill of exchange or check. It means any person entitled in his own name to the possession thereof and to receive or recover the amount due thereon from the parties thereto, where the note, bill or check is lost or destroyed, its holder is the person so entitled at the time of such loss or destruction. Very easy to understand. Basically, to become a holder, just possessing that is not enough. Okay. So if I have given Ankit a check of 10,000 rupees and Ankit has the check in his own hands now, he is the holder because it is in his possession, number one, and his name is there on the check. So he can recover the amount. Understood? So to become a holder, there are conditions that you have to satisfy. Number one, the possession should be with the holder and the name of that instrument should be there. The person who possesses that instrument, his entitlement should be there. Understood? So this is the title of a holder. Then holder in due course. Holder in due course has more privileges than a holder. Understood? Because a holder in due course has something known as a consideration. What is the meaning of this? See, to become a holder, there is consideration. There may be or may not be consideration that is there. But in a holder in due course has a consideration. What is a consideration? Considerations means give and take. Give and take. Understood? So for example, let's say you are running a company ABC and in your company there is an employee. Okay. Employee salary is 10,000 rupees. Now employee has worked hard for you for 1 month. Now you want to pay him his salary. So you write a check of 10,000 rupees in the name of your employee. Now in this case, there is a consideration. Consideration means what? Employee has given you back something which is 1 month of hard work or man hours and you are paying him 10,000. So there is a consideration involved. Consideration word is defined by Indian Contract Act in 1872. Indian Contract Act of 1872 defines the word consideration. Consideration is a give and take. Now this give and take can be physical goods, it can be services. Now in the example that I told you, it was services. Your employee has given you a service for 1 month and in return, you are giving him a check of 10,000 rupees. Understood? Does your employee, he holds the check in good faith? Yes. You have given him the check. He has not stolen it or he has not found it. It was not found in lost and found. It was a bona fide or in good faith given by you to him. So it is in good faith. Then there is maturity which is remaining. It is not a stale check. It is a proper check. So before maturity, in good faith and in consideration, then the person who has the check or your employee in this case is a holder in due course. It is defined by section 9. To become a holder in due course, there is a consideration that is involved. Understood? So if you become the possessor, if you possess a check which has consideration in good faith before the maturity period, then you are a holder in due course. And holder in due course has more rights than a holder. Why? Because a holder, there is no consideration involved. So for example, this employee, I repeat, this employee has a marriage in his home. So he comes to you for help. He says, please give me 1 lakh rupees because there is a marriage in my home. Now he is a good employee. So you have given him a check of 1 lakh rupees. Now for this 1 lakh, he has got this in good faith. Yes. This 1 lakh is entitled on his name. Yes. So he is a holder, but he is not a holder in due course because for this 1 lakh rupee, he has not given you any service. Understood? So this employee, he has a marriage in his family. You are helping him out. You have given him a check of 1 lakh rupee. It is in his name. Yes. It is in good faith. Yes. He is the possessor. His name is there on the check, but he has not given you a consideration. There is no consideration involved. So he is only a holder of the check. He is not a holder in due course. But for that 10,000 rupees, which was his salary, he was a holder in due course. I hope now it is absolutely crystal clear. Holder versus holder in due course. The main difference is that in holder in due course, there is a consideration involved or there is a give and take. Right? and holder in due course has more legal rights. So for example, holder in due course, if the check is dishonored, then a holder in due course can sue, can take legal action against all the prior parties. So for example, if there is a person A, he gives the check to person B, B endorses the person C, and between C and D there is a consideration involved. So D now has finally the check, right, in his name, and there is consideration involved. So D is the holder in due course. Okay. If the check is bounced or dishonored, then D can sue C, B and A, all the prior parties, because he is a holder in due course. He has more legal rights. Whereas a holder, he cannot sue all the prior parties. Then, for becoming a holder in due course, the instrument must be obtained in good faith. This is also a condition, bona fide. For being a holder, the instrument may or may not be obtained in good faith. What does it mean? So for example, if there is a bearer check and you steal from someone, you have obtained the negotiable instrument, right? But you have stolen it. You are the holder, but you have stolen it. Let's say the check was written to Amit Gupta. You went to Amit Gupta's house, you broke in and you took the check. And behind it, so the thief name is Sandeep. So he wrote pay to Sandeep and he put the signature of Amit Gupta. He has committed a crime. He is impersonating Amit Gupta. He is putting his signature. But he is now the holder. The check-in is his name, but it is not obtained in good faith. A holder may be a person who has not obtained in good faith. It may be in good faith, it may not be. But for being a holder in due course, it always has to be in good faith. Understood? And as I said, a holder in due course has more privileges than a holder. And a holder in due course will always have consideration. A holder, there will be, it's not necessary that there is consideration to be a holder. But in a holder in due course, we'll always have a consideration. Now let's talk about inland instrument and foreign instrument. Inland instrument is defined in section 11. Basically, let's say if you are giving a check to a foreign company in America, you are writing a check to a American company, so that becomes a foreign instrument. If you are writing it for an Indian company, then it becomes a inland instrument. Inland instrument is defined in section 11 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. Inland instrument is a promissory note, a bill of exchange or a check drawn or made in India and made payable in India. Understood? A foreign instrument is defined by section 12 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. Foreign instrument, any such instrument not so drawn, made or made payable shall be deemed to be a foreign instrument. Understood? Means it is payable abroad. That is a foreign instrument. Section 12. Then section 18. Now look at the check. Let's say you have filled here 9,000 rupees in digits, but you have written here 8,000 rupees, which means there is a mismatch. There is a mismatch in the figures and words. In words, you have written 8,000 rupees. In figure, you have written 9,000 rupees. So which one will be the taken into account? It will always be the written in words. Understood? So section 18 says, when an amount is stated differently in figures and words, if the amount undertaken or ordered to be paid is stated differently in figures and in word, the amount stated in word shall be amount undertaken or ordered to be paid. But I will tell you what happens in practicality. If there is a mismatch between words and figure, right, then usually the bank sends the check back to the drawer or the writer of the check and he asks for a clarification or a new check, usually. But the law says that what you write in the words is the final. And that is why the amount written in words is called legal amount, whereas the amount written in figures here or in digits is called the courtesy amount. Now let's take a look at inchoate stamped instruments. Inchoate simply means incomplete. Incomplete. It is defined in section 20 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. What is the meaning of this? You have signed the check, right? You have signed a check but you have not filled the check completely. That is called an inchoate stamped instrument. When one person signs and delivers to another a paper stamped in accordance with the law relating to negotiable instrument then in force in India and either wholly blank or having written thereon an incomplete negotiable instrument, he thereby gives prima facie authority to the holder thereof to make or complete as the case may be upon it a negotiable instrument for the amount specified therein and not exceeding the amount covered by the stamp. So let's say this check you have written in someone's name, you have put your signature, but you have not put other details, right? You have, let's say, written the name Amit Gupta. Okay, you have mentioned the name of the payee, but you have not written other detail. So now you have given the right to the holder, Amit Gupta in this case, to fill up the details. So this is what will be called a inchoate stamped instrument. Now there is section 14 in the Negotiable Instrument Act which talks about negotiation. The negotiation is nothing but transferring something. So promissory note, bill of exchange or check is transferred to any person so as to constitute the person the holder, then the instrument is said to be negotiated. So if A is writing a check to B, B is endorsing it to C, C to D, then this is the process of negotiation. And how negotiation happens? It happens by endorsement, or endorsement means the same, and that is covered by section 15, right? So when the maker or holder of a negotiable instrument signs the same, otherwise than as such maker for the purpose of negotiation on the back or face thereof or on slip of paper annexed thereto, or so signs for the same purpose a stamped paper intended to be completed as a negotiable instrument, he is said to endorse the same and is called endorser. So if I am the person A, I am writing a check to B, B is endorsing it to C. So B is endorsing it to C means what? B is the endorser, C is the endorsee, and C is giving it to D. C is signing on the back of the check and saying pay to D and putting his sign. So C is endorsing it to D. So in this case, then C will become the endorser, D will become the endorsee. So this process goes on and on. Now let me tell you how many times you can endorse a negotiable instrument. You can do it infinite times within the maturity period. Within the maturity period. Understood? So you can endorse a negotiable instrument n number of times, but it has to be within the maturity period. So what is the difference then between negotiation and endorsement? See, negotiation is a bigger Venn diagram. If I draw a diagram, this entire is the negotiation and one part of it is endorsement. Negotiation is the entire process of transferring, and endorsement is one way of endorsement is one way of negotiation. Understood? So negotiation is in section 14 and endorsement is in section 15. Now let's see what are the types of endorsement. There is a blank or general endorsement. You just put a sign on your check and whoever fills his name, it is a blank or general endorsement. Okay. So here the endorser will sign his name and it becomes payable to whoever has the check. Then there is special or full endorsement. You write the name of the person here whom you are endorsing it to. That is called a special or full endorsement. So this person will then receive the payment. There is restrictive endorsement, which restricts further negotiation. How you can restrict further negotiation? I told you, you can cut this part on order. You can just cut it on the check like this. Okay. Or you can write, for example, pay to C only on the back of, for example, A has written a check to B. Now B wants to endorse it to C, but B wants that it should not be endorsed further. Only C gets the money. C cannot endorse it further. So how to restrict? He will write on the back of the check, pay to C only, and put his signature. So now only C can take the money. C cannot endorse it to D. So this is called restrictive endorsement. Partial endorsement. Partial endorsement is not possible in Negotiable Instruments Act. Okay, as per the section 56 of the Negotiable Instrument Act 1881, such an endorsement is invalid under law. What is partial endorsement? It can't happen that, let's say, A has signed a check to B. So B then endorses it to C, let's say this check is of 2 lakh rupees. So B cannot say that out of 2 lakh, you only give C 1 lakh. This is not possible. Partial endorsement is not possible. And conditional endorsement, where the fulfillment of some conditions is required. So for example, you can put conditions like this person is right now 20 years old, but this person gets the benefit of the check once he turns 21. These kind of some conditions can be applied in some cases. Now let's take a look at general crossing. General crossing, so there are 4 types of crossing. One is the general crossing, one is the special crossing, one is the account payee crossing, and the 4th one is not negotiable crossing. I repeat, general crossing, special crossing, account payee crossing, and not negotiable crossing. There are 4 types of crossing. If in the exam they ask you which of these 4 types of crossing is not covered under Negotiable Instruments Act, then the answer is account payee crossing. Account payee crossing is not a part of the Negotiable Instruments Act, but for all practical purposes, people do write account payee. And by the way, general crossing and account payee crossing is the same. Absolutely same. No difference at all. Okay. So how does this work? It works how? Let me tell you. Let's say you have written a check to Amit Gupta and you cross the check, which means now the money will go only in the account. Only in the account. If you want that it should go only in the account of Amit Gupta, he cannot endorse it further. You cut or order from here, right? And you put a general crossing. This is called general crossing. General crossing simply means that the amount will go into the account. If you write here account payee, it also means the same. It also means the same. It means whoever is the payee mentioned, it will go to his account. It will go to his account. So whether you write account payee or you don't means the same. Then why are we saying it is a different type of crossing? Why are we saying that it is a different type of crossing? Because account payee crossing is not covered under the statute of the Negotiable Instruments Act of 1881, whereas a general crossing is covered in section 123 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. That is the only difference. Otherwise, they are absolutely same, right? Now, sometimes in general crossing, you can put a name of the company here. For example, if you are paying a premium of LIC, right, you have to pay 5,000 rupees premium. So somebody comes to your house, LIC agent, and you have to pay 5,000 premium through a check. You put a cross and you put LIC here. It means the money will only go now to the company. The LIC agent cannot encash it. Otherwise, there is a risk sometimes. There is a risk sometimes. For example, let's say if it is a bearer check. Let's say if it is a bearer check. And here you write pay to LIC 5,000 rupees. You sign it. If it is a bearer check, the agent can go to the bank and he can, over the counter, he can encash it because it is a bearer check. Your money will not go to LIC. So one of the ways you can make sure it goes to LIC, you put a crossing and you put the name of the company LIC. So now it will make sure the money goes to LIC. Understood? So this is also a general crossing. Account payee crossing, I told you, it is used in practice but not defined by the law. Account payee crossing, it is similar to general crossing only, but it is not covered under the Negotiable Instruments Act. Then we have a special crossing. What is the meaning of special crossing? In a special crossing, you put the name of the bank also. So let me show you how it is done. Special crossing. Let me show you a check. So this is a check. You put 2 lines here and let's say you write HDFC here. So it would mean that now the money will go only in the HDFC account. Let's say I have an account in State Bank of India, in HDFC Bank, in Axis Bank, and in Bank of Baroda. I have 4 bank accounts, one in each of these bank accounts. And I am the payee, which means I am the beneficiary. If Ankit has written a check on my name, so pay to Gaurav Garg a sum of 10,000 rupees. He puts his signature, Ankit. Now Ankit has given me a check of 10,000 rupees. It is up to me. I can get the money in whichever bank I want, because I have 4 bank account in one in different bank. I can put this check for clearing in SBI also. In that case, money will come to my SBI account. I can go to HDFC and get it in my HDFC account. I can take it in my Axis or BOB. But if Ankit has crossed it and he has written HDFC, it means I can only get it cleared in my HDFC account. I cannot get this money in SBI, Axis or Bank of Baroda. So this is a special crossing. In special crossing, it is defined by section 124 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. The check will bear the name of the bank, either with or without the words not negotiable, and it means that the payment can be made only to that specific bank. Now let's come to the last type of crossing, which is the not negotiable crossing. It is defined by section 130. Please make it 130. So it is defined by section 130. It is called not negotiable. Now what is that? You take a check, you put 2 lines and you put not negotiable. What does this mean? See, not negotiable does not mean that now the check is non-transferable, because it is a negotiable instrument, so the check will still can be endorsed. But the difference here is that the person to whom you transfer this, right, he will not get a better title than your title. So let me explain. Let's see, there is a person A, there is a person B. A has written a check to B. B endorses it to C. Okay. And between B and C, there is a consideration involved. So C becomes holder in due course. Understood? C becomes holder in due course. Now, someone steals the check from C. So D, let's say D is that person. And D, let's say it is a bearer check. Okay. So anybody who has the check can get the money. A gives it to B. A writes the check to B. It is a bearer check. Then B endorses it to C and there is a consideration involved. So C becomes a holder in due course. Now, what C does is C puts a crossing and he writes non-negotiable. Then C, let's say in C's home there is a theft. D gets it. And D therefore has obtained the check mala fide or not in good faith. So D has a bad title, right? Now D gives the check to E, and between D and E there is a consideration involved. So can E become a holder in due course? No. If the check has a crossing and written non-negotiable, it means that this title cannot be given to him. Has E got the check in good faith? Yes, E has got in good faith. D has not got in good faith, but E has got in good faith. It is before maturity and there is a consideration involved. So by the rule, he should also get holder in due course title. But because D did not get a good title, he has a bad title. This bad title will only reflect further for all the endorsements. Understood? This is the advantage of such a crossing. You put not negotiable. Then finally, whichever person, let's say E gives it to F, F gives it to G, whatever. Whoever comes to the bank finally to encash it, the bank will be very careful this time because there is a double crossing, not negotiable. So bank will do complete due diligence effort and check the source, and bank will leave no stone unturned. Understood? Because there was in case of a tenting of a check, this is called a tenting. So the tenting will apply the title of all the subsequent transferee also becomes tainted. So if this is a bad title, E will also have a bad title, even though E obtained it in good faith from D. Right? So this is one advantage of a not negotiable check crossing. It is covered by section 130. And let me just read it out quickly. As per section 130, basically this is a very legal language. It is not easy to read. Okay, you must have realized it by now. Here, not negotiable, right? If you put this word, a person taking a check bearing a general or special crossing with the words not negotiable will not have and is neither capable of giving a better title than that which the person from whom he took it had. So if A is giving it to B, B is giving it to C, C is giving it to D, and if it is not negotiable, let's say C put the not negotiable thing, then D cannot give a better title to E than what C had. So if C was holder in due course, the best that E can have is a holder in due course. And if D obtains it in bad faith, then E will also have a bad title. So this is the advantage. So not negotiable crossing takes away this important feature. What is this feature? Basically, I told you one of the important feature of a negotiable instrument is that a person who receives it in good faith without negligence or value before maturity and without knowing the defect in the title becomes holder in a due course, right? So he gets a good title to the instrument. Thus he becomes the holder in due course and acquires an indisputable title. Also, when the instrument passes through a holder in due course, all the subsequent holder also receive a good title. But not negotiable crossing takes away this important feature. In this case, the transferee does not get the right of the holder in due course. Okay. Only if the title of the transferor is good, the title of the transferee is good. So in case of any tainting in the title of any one of the endorser, all the subsequent transferee also become tainted. So this is an advantage of not negotiable check crossing. All the endorsements that you do or the person to whom you have endorsed that check, in future if he endorses it to someone, they cannot get they cannot give a better title than you had. If you had a payment in due course, holder in due course title, then the best they can have is a holder in due course title. That is the best. Understood? So this is a not negotiable check crossing covered by section 130. And finally, the dishonor of a check. So section 138 covers dishonor of a check. So dishonor can happen for various reasons. So for example, if there are insufficient funds, then the check will bounce. If the account is closed, then if there is an insolvency, if there is a mismatch of data, irregular signature, if the check becomes stale, if your account is frozen by the government or the court, different reasons check can be dishonored. And what is the punishment? So 2 years in jail or 2 times the 2 times the amount as fine or both. For example, if you have written a check of 10 lakh rupees to someone and it gets dishonored, so you might have to pay maximum 20 lakh rupees fine, 2 times the amount of the check, 2 years in jail or both. Understood? So this is the punishment for dishonor of a check. 2 years in jail with fine, that fine is 2 times the amount, right? And both. This is the section 138 which defines the dishonor of a check. So that was a video for Negotiable Instruments Act. If you have any doubts, please let me know. This was a complicated topic. It is not an easy topic to study at all. Lot of concepts, but I have taught it at a very, very high level. You will be surprised at the things that I have taught in this class. I could have just limited my video to a normal bank PO exam, but I didn't. I taught you very deep concepts. This will make you also a very, very confident citizen because these concepts can be applied in your daily life as well. So that is the quality I bring in the Banking Awareness Static course. Do give a shout out if you like this course, and I will see you very soon in lecture 3, which is SARFAESI Act. Take care.